All right, so in yesterday's lesson, 7-1, we changed all the percents to decimals. Well, as I said and as we talked about, you can also change any percent into a fraction. So today we're going to be basically doing the same types of problems we did yesterday, um, except for instead of changing things into decimals, we're going to change the percents into a fraction. And in order to use it as a fraction, we're going to use what we call a proportion. All right, now we haven't really talked about proportions much yet, but proportions work out really nicely because it gives us a specific place to put each item in a problem. Namely, especially when we're talking about percents. So you see we have a P up here, that stands for part. And then down here is our whole. So you have a part of a whole. Now, the word of is almost always right in front of the whole. Kind of like when we did yesterday, we did percent of a number. Well, that number was always the whole problem. So we never actually had to find the part. And we always talked about whenever we were working with percents in the past, we always put n percent over 100. Okay, so that would be like n over 100. Okay, so the first step we have to do is we have to identify the placement of all of our items. And so we got to figure out what is the part, what is the whole, and what is the percent. Now, one of these three items we're not going to know, and that's what we're going to be able to solve for. Now, when it says cross multiply and divide, what that means is right here we get to cross multiply these two numbers and then we get to divide. Now you'll see how that works once we start doing one of our examples. So for the question, what percent of 24 is 18? Okay, now I wrote some notes over here. It says the part is the number before or after is. So here's is, and so that makes this the part because it's before or after. Now, I also see that 24 is right before is, so you might think that that's kind of confusing. Well, you know what I like to do is I like to draw my lines here, my fraction lines, okay? Always make this number right here 100. We know how to fill that out, okay? Whatever percent we have is going to go up here. Well, it looks like what percent? It looks like we're going to be finding that percent. Okay, now always use the letter N for that number. Okay, when we look back at our diagram, that's what we're trying to use here. Okay, we're going to have a P for part, a W for whole, and an N for percent. So what percent is what we're looking for? Okay, now whole number, I actually like it if we write the word of right there every single time. If you look at our example, notice the word of is right here. Whenever you see the word of, okay, the number after of is always your whole. So of 24 and is 18, so 18 is going to go on the top. All right, so now we have our placement identified. And now this is called a proportion. What we're saying is that we're saying this ratio or this fraction is equal to this fraction. Okay, now the nice thing about a proportion is it's pretty easy to solve these using a method called cross multiply and divide. So we cross multiply, so 24 times n is 24n, and then we cross multiply again, and we say equals, okay, 18 times 100 is 1,800. Okay, now we've seen these type of equations. Okay, we have a variable right here, except for, we really don't have to think about what we do very much because we always say cross multiply, then divide by the coefficient. So what is the coefficient? 24. So we're going to divide both sides by 24. So 1,800 divided by 24 is 75. So n equals 75. And remember, we were solving for percent, so it's 75%. And that's my answer. So 75%, kind of like we were doing in lesson 7-1, 75% of 24, okay, is 18, okay? So again, this takes us back to lesson 7-1, except for now we're dealing with fractions and we're creating these proportions. All right, in example 2, it says what number is 30% of 150? So right away, start with your fraction bars, put 100 in the bottom, draw a percent up here, and write the word of right there. You should write this every time you start one of these problems, whenever you're using the percent proportion, okay? Now, I see that this is 30%, so that makes it easy. We just write 30 right there. This says of 150. Now, where do we put of? Right next to of there, so it's 150. And this is the letter, or this is the spot that I don't know. Okay, what letter do we put there? This would be our part. Again, cross multiply, so I have 100 times P. Cross multiply here. I have 150 times 30, which equals 4,500. And then we divide by the coefficient. Remember, the coefficient is always the number right next to the variable. So I'm going to get P is equal to 45. So what that means is that 45, the number 45 is 30% of 150. So what we're saying is that this ratio, 45 out of 150, is equivalent to 30 out of 100. Okay, that's what we're saying. We're saying that these two ratios are equivalent. Okay, so the part is 45. That would be our answer. All right, so again, start with your lines. Here we draw a line, draw another line. You always put 100 down here. You put your percent up above 100, and we're going to write the word of, just so it helps us with our placement. Okay. Now, I always look to see if I have my percent first. So here I have 80%, so that's easy. We write it in. Okay. Now it says of what number? Of what number? Now I don't have a number for of, so I'm going to put W for whole, because that's where I put my whole. Now look up here, part. The number before or after is. Is right here, so that's where I put 12. Okay, you always just got to check your rules. Check your rules, check your rules, okay? And always start with the fraction bars. Your line equals your line. All right, you have your percent on top, 100 is always on the bottom, and the word of is right there. And that should help you fill out your ratios. Now, this step, we always cross multiply. So I'm going to do 80 times W is equal to 12 times 100, which is 1,200. Then I divide by the coefficient. So W is equal to 15. So 15 is the whole, 12 is the part. So 12 out of 15 would be 80%. So that'd be like thinking about a quiz. If you got 12 questions right out of 15 questions, you would get an 80% on that quiz. Okay? Alright, so now when we're working with a word problem, we still need to basically start the same way. We're trying to determine where we're going to put everything. So I'm going to start with my bar lines. Here's my percent. Here's 100. And here's the word of. Okay? Sally read the nutrition facts on a box of her favorite cereal. Each cup of the cereal provides 7%, so that's a percent. I'm going to write that right up there, of the recommended daily value of potassium. If a cup of cereal contains 260 milligrams of potassium, what is the recommended daily value of potassium? Okay, so we got to think about this a little bit, okay? What is going to be the part and what is going to be the whole? Do you think 260 is going to be the part? or will that be the whole daily value? So let's read it again. Each cup of the cereal provides 7%. So each cup only represents 7%. All right, the cup itself represents 7%, so not 100%. Now it also says if a cup contains 260 milligrams, what is the recommended daily value? So it sounds like we need to put 260 up here because each cup is 260 milligrams, and also each cup is 7%. So we kind of match those things up. And then we're going to write a W because we're trying to find the whole. So now we need to cross multiply. So 7 times W and 260 times 100. So 7W equals 26,000. Okay, now we divide by 7 on both sides to get W is equal to about 3,714.3 milligrams. Okay, so again, we were going to look for a pretty big number here because 260 itself is a pretty good number. It's pretty big size, and it's only 7% of the daily value. So we know that this daily value is going to be a pretty large number. If you wanted to check this, you could take 260 and divide it by 3,714.3, and you're going to get really close to 7%. My calculator says 0.069999. So again, you move the decimal 2 places to the right, and you would get 6.9999%, which we can round that to 7%. So this is a pretty good way here to find the answer. So again, today's lesson is just helping us to learn how we can use the percent as a fraction. And in order to do that, it's really helpful for us to set it up as a proportion. Okay, remember to always set it up using our diagram here. We put the part on top of the whole, and we put n% over 100. Always put it in these spots. Remember, of and whole go together. Is will be close to the part. N is easy to find because it's a percentage, and 100 will never change. Okay, and then the next step, we just always cross multiply and then divide by the coefficient. And then you'll be able to solve the problem like that each time. Okay, so be sure to check the Moodle page for your homework, and also you can check the homework helper if you have any questions on the odd number problems.